Okay, welcome back, Matadors. This is going to be the Chapter 2 overview. So this is what we're going to be covering next, just a brief summary of the entire chapter. We only have 2 left, and we have about 1 month of distance learning left, and maybe about a week beyond that as well. I just want to focus on the ownership part of honor. This is your time to really take ownership and to apply yourself to all of your classes during this time of distance learning. A lot of the pressure is on you, and it's up to you to rise to the occasion. So this is Chapter 2. It's going to be titled Transformations. There are 7 sections, as you can see up on the screen right now. And basically it's going to be about making changes to geometric shapes. And I want to briefly give you a quick introduction to each one of these. So starting in Chapter 2, Lesson 1 on congruent figures, if you remember that phrase congruent, remember it means exactly the same, right? Congruent means exactly the same. So you're going to be dealing with shapes that are congruent. Remember, they have the same size and the same shape, and you're going to be identifying whether or not they are congruent. So that's what you'll be doing in Chapter 2, Lesson 1. In Chapter 2, Lesson 2, we're going to be performing what's called a geometric transformation, and this one's called a translation. So when we're going over translations, a key phrase when dealing with translations is the word slide, and we'll get into that another time, but slide is a key word there for translations. The next one is going to be on reflections, and if you're doing a reflection, which you've already done before with using points on a coordinate plane in about 6th grade. Reflections are where you take one shape and you reflect it over an axis, either the Y or the X. And the key phrase I want you to think about now is what happens when you look into a mirror. Okay, what happens when you look into a mirror? The next one, Chapter 2, Lesson 4, is going to be on making rotations. Okay, rotations, and that's just taking a shape and spinning it, right? Rotating it or spinning it about a certain point on the shape, or maybe the origin of a coordinate plane. So you're just taking a shape and you're rotating it. So those are the first 3 basic transformations that we will be going over in the chapter. Next 2 lessons, 2.5 and 2.6, on similar figures. Remember, similar, the word similar is different than congruent, so they look alike, right? But they are not exactly the same. And if you recall, congruent is exactly the same. So similar, they look alike. Like all squares are similar, but they are not all the same. Perimeters and areas of similar figures. So you'll be finding out missing dimensions with shapes that are similar to one another. And the last one is dilation. So this is probably the most complex transformation. And it's when you take a shape and you either enlarge or reduce. So you're not changing the integrity of the shape, you're changing the size of a shape. So those are what we're going to be covering over this next chapter. The next thing I want to review with you is Chapter 2, what you've learned before. Now again, you can pause this video whenever you need to, if you're taking notes and to catch up on it. If not, I will be kind of keeping a quicker pace to leave the decision in your hands if you want to maybe peruse through the video or pause it wherever you need to. But this is Chapter 2, what you learned before. So this is already available to you as of now, and today is Friday, April 17th. This assignment is available to you. You may have done it already. If you did, then look at this as a quick check. If you haven't done it yet, then maybe this could be a nice review before you get started on it. what you learned before. So reflecting points, and this is something from 6th grade. We're going to do what's called a reflection, right, in the x-axis. So let me highlight the x-axis. So whatever point we're going to make, we're going to reflect it across that axis. So the first point is -3, 3, -4. So 3, -4. So remember, we would take the origin as a starting point, and we would go over 1, 2, 3, and down 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's where our point would be. And now if we're going to reflect it over the x-axis, that means we're going to take it and we're going to move it somewhere over in this direction. All we have to do is really maintain this line, this vertical line, since we're making a reflection over the x-axis, and just count the distance it is away from the axis itself. So 1, 2, 3, 4. It's four spaces down, so it's 4 spaces down. So that means from the axis, we're going to go 4 spaces up. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And this is 4 spaces up. And this is where your reflected point would be, which is at 3. So the x stays the same, but the y turns to its opposite number. So you can see when you're reflecting over the x-axis, the x stayed the same, right? But the y went to its opposite number. So -4's opposite is +4. So we're going to try a reflection again. And again, you can pause the video and you can make up your own coordinate plane, plot these points, and then reflect them on your own over the indicated axis for A, B, and C. But I'm just going to go ahead and go through them, and you can check them as you go. So let's first graph point A is at 2 and 1. So I would go over 2 and up 1, and I would get point A. And it's asking me to reflect it over the x-axis. So that's going to be a reflection over this axis here. And again, it's going to stay along this vertical line, but we're just going to count how many units it is away from the x-axis. It's 1 unit away, so that means we go down 1 unit. And we would make our A now is reflected. And that little 1 on top is a symbol for prime, so that's A, and then A prime. So it's at 2, -1, and this is at 2 and 1. And again, the x's stay the same when you're reflecting over the x, and the y goes to its opposite number. So let's go ahead and take a look at B. B is at -1 and 2, so we would go -1 and up 2, and this would be where B is located. So -1 and 2. Since we're reflecting over the x-axis, we're going to reflect here over that axis. Then we're going to keep this vertical line and just count how many units is it away from the x-axis. So it's 2 units away from the x-axis. So that means it's going to be 2 units in the opposite direction from the x-axis, and this is where B prime would be. And again, prime is just an indication of the point after you moved it. It is still at -1 on the x, but it's now at -2 on the y. And last, let's go ahead and do point C. And let me erase these other guys. You can scroll back and rewatch each portion of the video as need be, but C is at -2 and -3, so -2 and -3, and this is where point C is at, -2, -3, and again we're doing a reflection over the x-axis, and I'm going to go ahead, and I made a mistake when I was doing this. We're going to switch that up here. and we'll do a reflection over the y here. So we're going to go ahead and make that change. So if you are watching B, please make sure you know that it was over the x-axis. C, we're going to be reflecting it over the y-axis. So this is the y-axis. It goes vertical. So we're going to be reflecting to the other side of the y. So that means the point is going to stay on this. Now it's a horizontal line because we're making a reflection over the vertical y-axis. And now let's just count how many units away from the y-axis C is. It's 2 units away. So it's going to be 2 units away on this side. And this is where C prime would be, and it is at 2 and -3. So now, since we're reflected again over the y-axis, the y's have stayed the same, and the x's changed to its opposite. And the last example, so now this is just something we've done in the past. It's drawing polygons in a coordinate plane, and there are the vertices, the points that we're going to use. So I'll go over it very quickly. We have points A, B, C, and D. A is at 1 and 5, so we go 1 over and 5 up, and this is point A. Point B is at 2 and 9, so we go 2 over and 9 up. So this is point B. Point C is at 6 over, so we go 6 over and 8 up. So we go up to 8. This is point C. And lastly, point D. Point D is at 8 over and 1 up. This is point D. And all we're going to do is connect the dots. And we have kind of a kite-looking shape. But we've all done this before. But now, this would be the basic review before we go any further. This, again, was the Chapter 2, What You've Learned Before review. Tune in next time. We're going to be going over Chapter 2, Lesson 1.